Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm finally getting around to installing the new EBC Stage 5 brake kit on my 2009 R56 Mini Cooper base. The brakes that are on it now are pretty well worn out. My rotors are pretty well shot. I do drive this thing very hard. It's so much fun to drive, and the only reason I put up with having to fix it all the time is because it's so much fun to drive. So we're going to upgrade the brakes. We're not going in a bigger size. We're going to keep the same size, but we're going to do the EBC Yellow Stuff brake pads, which I have on my truck, and the EBC dimpled and slotted rotors, which I also have on my truck. I love them on my truck as far as braking performance goes. They are kind of noisy, and man, they make a ton of brake dust. But I'll put up with that because they stop so well. And like I said, I drive this pretty hard. I would like to get it to the track, maybe mid-Ohio or something like that at some point. So we're going to go ahead and get these installed. I'll show you here in a second what they look like, and then we'll go through the process of tearing the old ones out, putting the new ones in. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for any other videos on what I got to do to keep this stupid car running and whatever else I'm working on. See you guys soon. Alright, so here's what they look like coming from the factory in my box. Premium Street, Performance Plus Race. For some reason they specifically have to put Jeep on there, but sure, whatever. We're going to put them on a Mini Cooper. So these are what our pads look like. You've got some backers on it, depending on what this is going on. And they don't call them Yellow Stuff for nothing. So they're made in England, and they have this special coating on them, which is to help them set when you first start using them. So these are our dimpled and slotted brake rotors. These are from EBC. They're made in England. You got to be specific on one is the right side and one is the left. On the other side here they have it marked with a little R for your right side so that it helps get the dust and the gases escape from the brake rotor. Alright, so for this project you're going to need a 13mm socket, a 16mm socket, and a 17mm socket. You want a socket wrench or an impact wrench. You're going to need a socket wrench anyway. You're also going to want a torque wrench for when you're tightening your pieces back down. You need a T50 Torx bit to get the screw that holds the caliper off. And you'll also want a way to depress your caliper back in once you've taken it apart so you can apply it to the new brake pads. I use a caliper depress tool. I used to use a C-clamp or channel locks and put the brake pad on it any way that you can evenly press that caliper back in so that you can attach it back to the brake pads. You'll also need a very narrow 15mm wrench in order to get the to hold on to the caliper slide bolts, because they tend to spin and it's a very narrow bolt. And I used a couple screwdrivers to pry the rotor apart, but that's pretty much the list of tools that you'll need to complete this project. I've posted the required torque settings in the description below, so please check those out. When you install new brake pads and rotors, there is a break-in period, so make sure that you're looking into how your particular brand wants those brake pads to break in the rotors. These EBC Yellow Stuffs, they ask that you drive mild to medium city driving for about 200 miles, and then they have a break-in process that is 4 or 5 stops from 60, hard stops from 60 to 20. So that's the break-in process for these pads and rotors, but make sure that you're reading the instructions on yours so that you get them broken in properly. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is take off your center cap, which you can do with just a little flathead screwdriver, and just kind of gently pry around it to expose your lug nuts. Alright, so there's two ways to get your lug nuts off. You can use a breaker bar like this, and you'll need a 17mm socket, or you can use one of these puppies, a Milwaukee or any other impact wrench, and you just make sure that you set it in reverse so you're not over tightening your lug nuts, and then you just put that on there and loosen them right up. Now this particular vehicle has these lug nuts that are what hold the wheel on, so it's not like your normal vehicle where the lug nuts stick out, where you have studs. So when you pull these out, be ready for the wheel to fall off. Unless, like mine right now, is stuck on. Just tap it a little bit and it'll pop right off. So you can see the rotor here is looking pretty rough. There's definitely, you can feel the drop here from the original surface, which this is normally all flush, down to what's basically worn out. So in order to get this off, first we have to take off the caliper and the hanger, and then we will remove this bolt with an E-Torx, and then we can pull this off, put the new one on, and put our new brake pads in. What we'll want to do is we're going to want to turn our rotor. I got the other side off the ground and jacked up, so we'll turn it as far as we can this way to help us access these nuts back here. Alright, so we got a 16 millimeter nut or bolt, 16 millimeter bolt in here in the back to remove the brake caliper mount. So I've put a breaker bar on mine because it's pretty hard to get the socket in there. And you're going to want to turn counterclockwise. So you want to save them. Now we got the one on the bottom. Once we pull that bolt out, this is going to want to come off. So we're going to have something to support this caliper so that we're not putting undue pressure on this brake line. I like to use these little metal bendable bungee kind of things, and we'll hang it up somewhere around the coil. So I'm just going to hang that right there so that's not going to pull on my brake cable. Now we can go ahead and pop out the old brake pads. They have that's a brake pad sensor. This car does come with brake pad sensors, and you'll get an alert in the vehicle that your brake pad, I think it was broke, or I broke it when I pulled the thing off. I don't really care about this. I know when my brakes are worn out because I know what they sound like. So I'm not even going to bother hooking that back up. But if you are, you want to make sure that you're not pulling on this too hard. It's this little sensor right here. And that brake pad is pretty much gone. So you can see there that there's no pad left on it. All right, let's pull off the, I'm going to turn this way for us so we can see back here. So right here at the bottom and right here at the top, these are the caliper mount bracket bolts. So those are a 16 millimeter wrench. So we are going to put that, I'm just going to use this torque wrench to help bust them loose. They come loose pretty easily with that. Alright, so this is a T50 Torx bit, which is going to go in right here, and we want to make sure that that's pressed in all the way. These are easy to strip, so we want to keep this as flush with the rotor as possible. I should have done this with the wheels on. Got it loose, wiggle it back and forth a little bit. There we go. Once I get it loose, we use our trusty Milwaukee battery powered socket. I'm going to hold on to the rotor and pull that out. And there is our rotor. The one thing I like to do is kind of clean up this surface a little bit. It gets a little bit of rust on it or corrosion. So I just have a little flap wheel Brillo pad kind of thing on an angle grinder. You could also use a light wire wheel with an air tool. I don't have the air tool, so we're just going to do this. So we'll go ahead and pull our brake pads out here. And you can see that this one is getting pretty low. I've already pulled the other one out, and it looks like this. So you can see there's no brake pad left. And it's even down to rubbing the metal right here. It's definitely time for new brake pads. So whenever I'm putting new rotors on it, I always take the old rotor and lay it on top of the new rotor to make sure that they're the same size. And we can see here that this one is not. So I'm flush at the bottom, and it's about 1/2 inch bigger than the one that came off of it. So I did some digging. I called Summit Racing. I talked with them for a while, and we got to looking, and I also talked to EBC Brakes, who manufactures this, and the bigger rotor goes on the Mini Cooper S, which is the turbocharged version. I have the base model, the non-turbocharged version, so mine are 1/2 inch smaller. And I thought maybe I'd put it on anyway and get the correct brake pads to go with it, so I'd have a little bit bigger brakes, but I'd have to replace the calipers, and the calipers from the dealer run about $570 for the pair, and I just don't want to spend that kind of money right now. I've already spent quite a bit on these, so maybe next time we do brakes, we'll plan ahead and we'll install a Cooper S upgrade to my Mini Cooper. But for now, I'm shipping these babies back, and I got some new ones on the way already, and when those get here, we'll get back to installing them. Well, hey folks, it's been about 2 months since we started this video, and we ended the last part of the video on I received the wrong size brake rotor. So with your base Mini Cooper, they're 11-inch rotors. For your Cooper S, it's 11.57-inch rotor, so they would not fit. So I spoke to Summit Racing and sent the other ones back and ordered some new ones. Well, due to, I guess, supply chain issues and the pandemic, about 5 or 6 of EBC's foundries have closed down, so there's a nationwide shortage of that particular brake rotor, and I got tired of waiting. My delivery date kept getting pushed back, so I finally reached someone at Pelican Parts, discovered Pelican Parts. They specialize in European parts and performance parts. So I spoke with a guy there, and they actually have a BMW and Mini specialist, and the man that I spoke to actually has a BMW, and he buys Zimmerman brake rotors, which are a German-made high-quality brake rotor. I didn't necessarily want drilled rotors. I wanted dimpled and slotted, but I just want to drive my car. So we bought the Zimmermans. We're going to install these. These should be very capable brake rotors, and we're still going to use the EBC Yellow Stuff brake pads. Thanks for staying this long. Okay, everything's recording, hopefully this time. All right, so we got our new Zimmerman brake rotor here, and before I apply it, I'm just going to hit the back of it here with some brake cleaner. I'm going to hit this with some brake cleaner. So before I put this on, I'm going to apply some anti-seize to this hub so it doesn't want to stick quite as much as it did. And then I need to get this onto the hub without touching the brake surface, especially with the anti-seize on my hands. So we'll line up the rotor mounting bolt. Get this loosely tightened back up here shortly. Now we are ready to put the caliper bracket back on. Now usually when you buy brake pads, they come with these new pieces of metal. These are like for the brake pads to slide in. For some reason, the pads that I bought did not have them, so I'm going to clean these up a little bit and just hit them with some brake cleaner there and scrub them out. And we'll grease them up and just reuse them. Not ideal. So your bracket, these bolts go in the back side. So before we put this up, we want to get our bracket mounting bolts which are these two right here. And we're going to put some anti-seize on them. So I'm going to line this up so that it fits over top. And the bolt comes through and screws into the bracket itself. I'm just going to hand tighten it. Alright, now I am going to torque these before I put this on, just because it's the easier access. So we're going to get our torque wrench and we're going to set it to 81 pound-feet. We need our 16 millimeter socket. Put that on the back. And with the torque wrench, you just push it down until you feel the click. That's our click right there. All right, we got 81 pound-feet on the two rear bolts. So 26 pound-feet for these bolts once they go in. One thing I will do is I'm going to pull out these caliper slides and I'm going to clean them off. And I'm going to put some new brake and caliper grease on it. This one was pretty well, no grease left. We'll slide that back in. And then you want to make sure that this seal fits over the piece there. You'll hear it pop. Pull this one off. We want a little bit of grease in here, but you want to be extra careful that you don't get any on the caliper. It will make it not want to stop. So there are two different types of brake pads here. So this one is your inner brake pad, so it's going to go on the inside, and then this is the outer. You can see the inner has that spot on the top for the brake pad sensor. I'm not putting those on because I don't really need them. I did put some brake grease on the back and on the edges. I'm trying to keep my greasy paws off of this. We're basically going to put these in the grooves in the bottom, and there's one on the top. And press that in. We'll get our other brake pad. I need to put some grease on this one. So I'll put some on the back. And just on these little corner bits, because they'll be sliding around. And this will kind of help prevent the squeaking. And it's going to go on the outside. So we sit that in. Trying not to touch any part of that. And I get it into that groove. Alright, so we're ready to put the caliper on once we press the caliper back into its reservoir. Before I do that, I am going to hit my slide bolts with a little bit of anti-seize. So they're ready to go. This is the caliper depressor that I have. Pull my caliper out a little bit here so I can see it. Turn this around. I'm going to put that right in the hole like this. So what I'm going to do is when I tighten this down, it's going to press that back in. And it's going to do it evenly. You want to make sure that you're doing it evenly or it'll tear up your caliper, and then you'll be putting new calipers on, new brake fluid, bleeding your brakes. So I want to press this till it's flush because we're going to need all that space. So that's pressed flush. The seal looks good. So we're going to take this around and we're going to gently slide it on there. We're going to grab the caliper slide bolt and put it in here. Get that hand tightened. I'm going to line up the bottom one and do the same thing. And remember, we got our torque wrench set for 28 pound-feet, but we will need our 15 millimeter wrench. There's my 28 pound-feet of torque. Whenever you're putting calipers on, you always want to make sure that your bleeder valve is on the top part. If you put it and your bleeder valve down at the bottom, you'll know that you've got your caliper on the wrong side of the vehicle, because the air needs to be able to move up to get the air out of your brake lines. We need to torque our front bolt. We've torqued our caliper brackets, and we've torqued our slide bolts. We need to torque this little bolt up front. We're going to have our lug nut ready, and I like to just kind of use my feet to hold this up back onto the hub and line it up. And we don't want to tighten it up with this thing because this has a ton of torque, so I'm just getting the loose out of there, and then we can tighten these up with our torque wrench. Size 17 socket, and those are 103 pound-feet of torque. Alright, so that's on there tight enough that we can set it down. It's much easier to tighten and do your torque settings when the wheel's on the ground, but I want to get it tight enough that it's not going to wobble. And do our 103 pound-feet of torque. We'll tighten them up crossways. That seems not very tight to me. And just so you're aware, I'm getting these torque specs from a Haynes manual. Double check them. Double check my setting, 103. Alright, let's torque the other side. Alright, go through them one more time. That one's good. That one's good. That one's good. That one's good. We're ready. Well, thanks everyone for joining. I hope this was helpful to you, and now you know how to change the brakes on your Mini Cooper. I've got lots more videos on repairs coming, and I hope you will subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell so that you will get updated when those come out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.